So how did I get to France? How did I meet these people? Well, it's through Bob. Bob is the kind of person, he's very, very kind-hearted. And he's very, even though his voice is so shy, stays to himself. When he's out and about, he loves meeting people and new people. And he'll often invite these new people home, or, we've probably over the years, 100 or more invitations. And then rarely, so it's pretty safe to invite people, because it's very rare that people will actually take you up on your offer. But anyway, because they're quite astounded by that hospitality, especially from other cultures. Anyway, Bob was fishing on the Skeena, and he kept hooking his lure to another fellow further down the river, and this guy was getting perturbed. Bob was a beginner fisher, and they were what they call bottom bouncing, where the hook or the lure bounces on the bottom and then attracts the fish that way. Anyway, there can be 10 or 12 lines, and so you don't want to have all these lines going through, and then you don't want to go cross, because you're more likely. But the way the river was running in that particular time, it was harder to control. So he kept hooking who he then found out his name was Jacques. And Jacques, was getting hot under the collar. And his friend, Philippe, this is his home, he's now passed on, was fishing elsewhere and wasn't having a problem, just a real, having a great old time. And then Bob struck up a conversation with Philippe, and Bob could hear that they spoke French, so Bob loves taking opportunities. Bob's first language is French. Bob Laval is a French name as well, from Saskatchewan. And so anyway, Bob and Philippe were having this great conversation, and then Jacques tuned into this and came, and then they started, all three of them started talking, and we had a great old time. And then the next day, Bob's, had already invited them, so Bob said, well, I'll come out and fish, and I'll bring Marian, and you can meet Marian. So I did, and actually that was the first time I also fished on the Skeena, and lucky me, I'm always a lucky fisher person, and I caught a steelhead, a pretty big one. But at that time, you used unbarbed hooks to make sure you don't damage the fish too much, and you had to release the steelhead at that point. So I got a big salmon, and of course that was, everybody else hadn't really caught much of anything, and I had my line in there for about, 20 minutes. I pissed a few fishermen off in my past because I have beginner's luck, they call it. Anyway, luck or not, this fish, became a conversation piece. So it was a lot of fun. Anyway, that friendship just sort of grew, and they did come for supper, and we had a wonderful time. And then they had been coming to the terrace area for, 15, 17 years already by that time, and often in the Kitimat, and they spent a lot of money here in Canada to come every 2, 3, 4 years, and we were lucky enough to meet Philippe and Jacques, and they were, we began to, I think, start talking about the spiritual aspects of life, and our ceremonial ways, and that became very intriguing, especially for Philippe, because we discovered later that Philippe had cancer for several years by that point and was under treatment, but the chemo didn't bother him too much, but it eventually caught up with him after several years, I think 5 or 6 years. The cancer did catch up with him, and let's say the treatments caught up with him. The treatments became lethal for him, So we were able to come to France before Philippe passed on, and we had a wonderful, I would say, I think a week here, visiting both Philippe and Jacques. Jacques lives in another village, town, not far from here, from Pigolmas, in the same valley that we're looking at. And we had a beautiful friendship, and very sad. But when we came here, you know, it was nervous, you know, because you're again inviting basically strangers that you've only met a few times. And Munya was particularly, I think, apprehensive about it, and but willing, open. And I guess she told Bob that it was just within minutes of meeting me that she just had a connection, and I felt the same. And again, we didn't have the language, just that heart and that openness and the same values about life and family. And so Munya in particular, and her daughter Sophie, kept the door open for me to return to France and you know, come and be with the girls. So that's what's brought me here 6 years after Philippe had passed. He had passed that same year that we had been here, later in that year. And yeah, beautiful man, just full of life. And yeah, that's the story. And so I don't like making promises I don't keep. I really try to do that. I try to stay in integrity with myself. So I said I would come back, and the ladies here, Sophie and just kept that door open and would call or email or send videos. Bouge de fesse, which means move your ass, get over here. They're not rude. It's just you could tell that I was already kind of in that family circle. And so, as I said before, I was going to come the year that COVID hit. After I had retired in January, I was planning to come in May to France. And so, what's the old saying? Better late than never. I live by those words. I'm not known for being the most on-time person by the clock, but I must say that my timing, however, is usually bang on, perfect. So I would say my timing for this trip has been amazing. The weather has been so beautiful, warm, and just mild. It's like probably spring in Terrace at around May, you know, so beautiful mornings, and things are starting to grow, and it's really, really neat. Yeah, so that's my story. Long apologies, but I'm making these videos not so much for somebody out there. I'm making them for me and for my children and my grandchildren, so they know their grandma in a different way. And I'll address the next thing. Why am I here by myself? Okay,